Okay. So, all right. Apparently now I'm just joining the conversation. I'm so sorry. I thought that YouTube was going to go automatically live when I clicked start streaming in OBS. It did not do that. So I have been talking to myself for 3 minutes. Welcome to the chat. I don't know how much of that other stuff you'll see or won't see, so I'll do a brief recap. Thank you for joining me. I used to do this all the time. I've gotten out of the habit of it. I'm really excited about doing the chat right now. If you've got a question, pop it in the chat and I will answer as many questions as I possibly can. I'm doing this because an opportunity presented itself, and so here we are. I was just talking to myself, and now I'm talking to all of us. Again, illustrating how much out of practice I am with live streaming, because I thought I was streaming and I wasn't. JeffRolka.com is a totally new website that I've recently built. I did this to make using the courses that I have there easier and ideally more effective. So the AAA method is free. You can get access to the AAA method when you sign up for the newsletter. And that and all the other courses are just so much easier to use now. And I must admit, there are a couple that I'm really excited about. One is the Breathing for Singing course, which is on a massive discounted sale right now to, kind of do the new website thing, to celebrate the new website. And also the community there, which is a much more interactive sharing environment where you can post videos, you can post audio, and I can listen to you. I can actually listen and help. So that was the main thrust behind changing the websites. If you haven't checked out jeffrolka.com, or you haven't done so recently, it would be a good time to go and poke in and have a look and just see what's going on. It's really far, far better than it was before and should be a lot more useful. So yeah, this is about your questions and things like that. And so I can see now that the chat is working. It's not letting me scroll, so there must not be that much stuff. So hello to those of you who are saying hello. Hi there. Welcome. Nebula Animations is asking, what's the highest note you can hit? Presumably they mean me. So one, I don't really think about it in those terms. I think about what's the highest note I can sing in a sustained capacity. And I'm a tenor. I think you can see my keyboard now. So this is middle C. I can sing C5s pretty comfortably, and I can sing D5s reasonably comfortably as well. As I get into the E flat 5s and F flat 5s, I can certainly sing them in a pattern and in a scale exercise. I would be reluctant to write those into a song, however, just because if I mostly I would think about that as from a live performance standpoint, just in that the vagaries and the inconsistencies in the live venue would make me nervous to have to count on being able to sing those pitches every night. I think in a studio environment or here at home, that's not a problem, but in the live venue, that would be more of an issue. But C5s to D5s, I'm very comfortable with as a general rule. In terms of like the highest note I could possibly vocalize, I don't know what that is right now. I know that in the past I've vocalized to G5s, so that's here. But I don't really make a habit of it. That's not like my thing, really. It's kind of an interesting sort of thing to do once in a while in a vocalization. But I'm mostly concerned about the most consistent sound, the most smooth transition across the secondo passagio. And so I work my extremities to facilitate that. And if you're asking where's my secondo passagio, it's right here between F and F sharp, right above middle C. So significantly lower, obviously, than any of those higher pitches. Hello from Ireland. I'm gonna screw it. Okay, so Scrolling back, I saw the comment from AC Light. Thank you, AC Light, for joining us. AC Light was just featured. One of their compositions was featured in a video last Saturday. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have a listen to that and to kind of, well, to talk about it, talk about what I was hearing and the different aspects of the composition. I'll get to your comment in just a second. AAA is great. I went through it and was so pleased with how far I've come. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mo. I'm a beginner and I'm for a beginner workout. You know what? I haven't done a beginner practice in such a long time. It is long overdue. Thank you for bringing that to my attention here in the chat. Russell Brothers, hi, yes. Hi from Ireland. Hello, everyone. There's AC Light's comment. I'd like to counter Nebula by asking what's the lowest note you can sing in a sustained capacity? Again, I suppose I should put my window in window there so you can have that view too. So here's C3, and this is middle C here. And I don't really like to sing I have had songs that incorporated B naturals in them, and I have struggled with that on stage when monitors were poor. Now, if the monitors had been better, maybe it'd been a different result and it'd be fine. So I like to keep it in that C3, B2. I don't really like to go much lower than that. When I'm not warmed up, I can usually vocalize kind of to a G. I quickly lose that as my vocal folds get warmed up, get engorged with blood, have a bit more tonus to them, a bit more tension in them overall. And then I generally lose that G there. So yeah, I don't really go much beyond a B if I can help it in a performance. Sometimes you have to, and you have to figure it out. Sometimes you just have to trust that it's going to be okay regardless of what you're hearing in the monitors or what you can't hear. Usually that's the problem in a live situation, is you can't hear what you're singing. And so the inclination is to engage and push a bit more to try to hear yourself, and then you can't sing those lower pitches because you're just inserting too much energy into the system. Andrew James Weber, been trying to only let tones into my ears and brain from artists who are singing with correct pitch. Billy Ocean, Sam Smith. Besides Jeff's warm-ups, can a singer get also muscle memory, and how? FYI, this is a coffee chat, so if you don't have your coffee yet, or maybe it's in Ireland, it's going to be kind of late for coffee. Well, that's a really interesting question, and I am at risk of going super deep on that. So I'm going to do my best to stay reasonably like mid-depth here. We're not going to I don't really answer anything in a superficial capacity if I can help it. But I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole in this one, because of course I think that part of your question involves whether or not there is muscle memory in the first place. That is in fact a contested or debatable position. And what side of that you come on would have a lot of bearing in regards to how I would answer your question. So if you are a believer in the concept of muscle memory, then one might make the argument that it's not so much the listening of things, but the correct sounding of those pitches and those passages that is in fact going to generate the muscle memory so that you are singing in tune or the way that you wish to. If you don't believe in muscle memory, that perhaps it's not actually the muscles that have any memory, but it's the pattern recognition aspects of your brain. Well, you're still going to have to repeat all that stuff, but there is an argument to be made for osmosis or learning by listening. I think that what we learn from listening to singers who sing with good intonation is listening to that pitch, listening to their pitches being sung, listening to it in relationship to the context of the music, and hearing how it fits with that context, and then trying to execute passages that have that aspect to them. So when we sing, we hear those same relationships. It is another form of pattern recognition. We're listening and hearing a pattern of either beats, discrepancies in the intonation, or lack of beats, good intonation. Either way, I don't know that listening alone is what's going to help you to sing in tune if that's what you're trying to do. It is going to be a part of your practice, like getting into the practice of singing so that you are executing pitches and you are learning the physical requirements to sing in tune. Here's a brain from artists who are singing with correct pitch. One might also argue that nowadays, I haven't heard much about Sam Smith, but a lot of other artists, of course, these days, even if you do not hear it obviously, they are auto-tuned. And so you're hearing correct pitch almost in all cases. The question there, though, is that is it correct by Western tonal music standards, or is it correct by the human ear? Human ear tends to hear in pure intonation. So, for example, if you played a third on a piano, it's naturally a little bit out of tune. But if we were to play a pitch and then sing a third above it, we would eventually sing that interval so that there were no beats in it. But then if you played the note on the piano that you were singing, you would hear that you were out of tune with the piano. Our ears will naturally gravitate to the lack of beats, to the pure intonation. And that too is another aspect of your question that we could dive down. But I'm going to move on. I hope that I've at least touched on some usable things there for you. Russell Brothers Animation. Hey Jeff, how do you feel about autotune? Are you with or against it? Oh, I was just talking about that. Autotune. Well, autotune is an incredible tool. I think that its artistic uses are very interesting, and artists have done some really creative things with them. For myself personally, it's a useful tool to learn about how I might be singing or how my clients might be singing in order to inform my practices, and then practice so that I don't need the auto-tuning any longer. I sort of, sometimes on releases I'll choose to auto-tune things because that's the release standard. If you're releasing popular music, it's basically got to be auto-tuned. There's no real way around that. If you're doing a singer-songwriter kind of a thing, then it's entirely up to you. If you are utterly reliant on auto-tune, I think that from a I don't want the effect, I just want to be able to have my voice sing in tune, I would say, if you really want to do those releases that way, that's fine. Do them, get them out there, but see it for what it is. Practice your game so that you don't need it as much, and then you can pick and choose it. As a producer, time versus money is always a question too. So if I have a client who is on a strict budget and the take has a reasonably good vibe, but there's a little bit of intonation discrepancy on a few passages, I have no qualms about auto-tuning it on their behalf. If budget isn't as much of a concern, then I would rather not auto-tune it and work towards getting the right take. Sometimes that means coming back another day. Sometimes that means pausing the whole production in order to practice a few passages and then going back to doing the recordings. Autotune's a great tool, and I think that how we use it, it's like any tool, really. It's not about what it is per se, it's about how we choose to use it and how it works for your ethos in the recording world. If you want to be a vocalist who doesn't need autotune, there's no reason not to use it to assess your kind of state of affairs. But realize too that it's going to deliver different results than you might gravitate to because of the way our ears work. So use it. It can be very helpful. If you don't want to be a vocalist that sings and uses autotune or relies on it, then you can still use it, get the information, and then practice so that you no longer need the autotuning. But I don't think it's arbitrarily good or bad. It's just a tool that we have. Nebula, wow, that's impressive, especially for tenors. Thank you for answering my question. Sure, no problem. Jeff, Jeff has the best vocal training view. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Sending love from Houston. Well, big love right back at you from the area of San Francisco, California today. I mean, not, like most days really these days. It's not like it's just today. I'm not traveling all over the place. Excuse me, I'm going to mute this mic so you don't have to listen to me gurgling. You can probably still hear me a little bit. One of the things about these live events is I get going and I forget to have drinks of water, which is not great for my voice. So I'm going to try and do that. I will do my best to mute my microphone so you don't have to listen to that. Sandy, I used to sing in an a cappella group, and we won the All Ireland 3 times. Congratulations. That is truly impressive. Ahmed Mohamed, how long do you think the most beginner singer can sing perfectly? Well, so the addition of the word perfectly into your question is a bit problematic in that I doubt that perfection is any real significant aspect of a beginner's beginnings, if you will. There's going to be lots of mistakes. The key is to observe those mistakes and try to get instruction or have watched a few videos or done some practices on my channel that are going to show you what to listen for, perhaps describe some of the physical aspects of what it might feel like, and try to sing it so that you observe those qualities. For a beginning vocalist, it is quite likely that your practices will be very, very short. This is due to the fact that a lot of the musculature hasn't been used in that capacity. A lot of the body postures aren't necessarily objectively fatiguing, but you won't have been accustomed to holding those postures the way that a more practiced vocalist would be. So what we want to try to do, and this is how I'm interpreting the use of your word perfectly, which is to say, you want to, as a beginning student, you want to try to execute things in as correct a fashion as you possibly can. Because these are new postures and possibly new usage of the vocal mechanism, they will be unusual, and you will most likely not be able to maintain them for very long periods of time, having to have good technique is what we might say. So it really does depend on the vocalist in question. Since you're doing, if you have a teacher, they can help you with this. If you don't have a teacher, then you might record yourself and listen back so that you're not having to evaluate it in real time. See if you can hear where you go from, I am engaged and upright and I'm doing well here. I can hear that I am accurately singing the exercises as compared to the example that Jeff gave in the video. And here, listen for when it breaks down. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and use that as your starting point. I would advise you to record and evaluate on a regular basis, but not every day, not even every week. I would suggest that as a beginner vocalist, probably every 2 weeks is a good place to start. If you get 3 or 4 days into that period and you feel like, this feels like it's all, like I feel pretty well sorted out here. I don't feel like I need to wait another 2 weeks. Do the evaluation then, see if you're right. If you're right, great, expand your practice. If you're not, carry on. That would be my suggestion to you. It's going to come down to how your own individual voice deals with the exercises, how your body deals with the postures and positions. Where am I? That was Ahmed. Sherry, whoa, bumped forward here. Hold on a second here. Let's find Sherry, or Sherry. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Hope that's true. David Walsh just popped in the room here. That's, okay, so there's a lot more comments than I thought there were. Hey Jeff, what exercises should I do against thin vocals? It kind of depends on what aspect of thin you mean. If it's like thin and squeezy, then I don't know if I caught it. Hopefully I caught it. I'll try to. See, my fear is that I'm going to mute my microphone and then forget to unmute it, and I'll be talking into the void again. Thin vocals. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the pace. Try to pick up the pace. Try to be thorough. If it's thin and squeezy, then you need to think about widening that space. You need to release a little bit of that vocal fold tension. You're going from a hyperglottic phonation where the vocal folds are getting squeezed together to one that is more balanced. What you can usually do is do exercises that incorporate wider vowels with narrower vowels. So do like a like an A, E, A kind of a thing. If by thin you mean it's thin and airy, then you need better vocal fold adduction. The opposite is true here. What you probably want to do are dynamic vocal exercises. We. So you have like short syllables into a melismatic pattern. In the beginning, if you're really airy, in the beginning you won't be able to do the dynamic into the melismatic. You'll just want to do dynamic vocal exercises. All of that stuff's in the, and I just don't recoil when I say the B word, beginner, okay? Think of them as fundamental practices. And if you've been singing for decades, but you still have an airy voice, and you've wanted to change it all this time, then maybe some fundamental stuff is appropriate. It's not that we ever outgrow these things. I still do dynamic air pressure exercises to make sure that everything is working right. I don't have to do them for very long on a day-to-day basis. I don't even necessarily do them every day. But I still do them with some regularity to make sure that everything's working right. They're fundamental aspects of our practice. They're in the beginner playlist. There's loads of them. That would be a good place to check it out. Andre, what is lowest possible notes tenor can hit? It can sing E flat 2. So Andre, I'm afraid I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. It sounds like you're looking for the lowest possible tenor note. Tenors, and it does depend a lot on the variety of tenor, and it also depends on when. Like I said, I can generally sing a G first thing in the morning, but I quickly lose that once I get warmed up. Most tenors will sing down to a C3 with a fair degree of competency. Depending on the variety of tenor and the overall characteristics of the voice, it can vary a little bit in that general area, but usually generally about there. And you haven't said how you're singing E flat 2. How you sing that pitch is just as or more important than that you can sing it. Been working on your tenor warm-ups for 3 years now, light years from where I was vocally, but still struggle with smoothing out E and oohs on the top end. Blake, yeah. Well, one, thank you for watching all this time. Work your exercises where they're in the middle of a wider vowel. So, like if you're saying E and oo. So like go from A. Oh, I did put the screen in screen. I am all discombobulated this morning. I have not done these regularly enough. Work the narrow vowel at the back end of a sequence that starts with a wider vowel. So like there I used A. I like A a lot. It's easy to sing. It's easy to manipulate. It's narrow enough to keep the vocal folds to kind of help with vocal fold adduction, but it's not so narrow that it generally prohibits function across the secondo passagio. So work those onto the back end of the exercises like I demonstrated, and do it with E, do it with U, and then notice what the E and the U feel like. Like notice how they sound, how they function, and then you have to anticipate that when you are only singing that vowel. That may mean anticipating the modification as you ascend. It may mean just anticipating the shape of that vowel from whatever vowel it is that you're coming to in the phrase. Melissa, never too late for coffee. I like that in theory, but the problem is that then, and I don't sleep particularly. I've never really been a super awesome sleeper. I'm tend to be very restless my whole life. And I start having, and I love coffee. That ends poorly for me. Basically, that's like a no sleep kind of a night. But speaking of coffee, and speaking of that, so this is a lesson in and of itself. Coffee, if you want to drink coffee, it's fine. It's going to be the heat that's going to be more of an issue. Just make sure you're offsetting it with water in this case. I tried to swallow softly as opposed to muting my microphone. Hopefully that wasn't disgusting. Anyways, yeah, stay hydrated, folks. This is a perfect coffee time where I live. Perfect. Excellent. Can we get more of warming up with lyrics videos? Yes. Thank you for asking. I haven't done that. Again, there's so many different aspects. I want to expand my release schedule more. It gets really hard, honestly, to continue to produce that volume of videos. Those of you who've been on the channel a lot know that I've changed my production sort of schedule recently. So I've spaced things out to try to make it more manageable. But it's still really hard. I would love to expand this more. And you're right, we need more beginner videos. We need more lyric videos. We need all of this stuff. I have a coffee right now. Wonderful, Sandy. Awesome. So thankful for your videos. Greetings from Ecuador. Hello. Greetings from California. Thank you for joining me. That is so cool. I am just in the middle of watching Long Way Up with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman. And they are just in Ecuador. It looks like an incredibly beautiful country. How can I understand where is my passagio? Sometimes it is D sharp 4, sometimes F sharp 4. Yeah, that's fair. Though that's interesting. So the secondo passagio, which is generally the area that you're talking about here and what I assume you're speaking to, it's going to, it can feel as if it migrates. And there is a bit of a discrepancy here because as vocalists and vocal teachers, we do our best to identify that spot as definitively as we possibly can. However, the reality is it's kind of a gray zone. It's not as if it's that spot and that spot alone. It is a little bit gray in general. So if you're feeling really highly energized and you're using your voice in a very efficient way, then it very well may be F or F sharp 4. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. Now, I would argue, however, that if when it is at that point, when you sing the G or the G sharp, it's always airy and your vocal folds just skate apart and separate, that's not balanced, right? The secondo passagio isn't how high can I possibly go before changing. No. It's the most efficient point of transition, right? So when you're shifting a car, if you drive a manual transmission, you don't wait until it's pegged redlining to shift gears, to shift in a most efficient capacity. You shift somewhere in that 2 to 4,000 RPM, depending on the way it's geared in the engine, so that you get the smoothest transfer of power from one set of gears to the next. And most of us, when we're beginning the process of learning about the secondo passagio, will try to sing higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And that is far too much thyroarytenoid energy, too high into the range, and it results in a poor transition. Too low is just as bad. So if, E sharp or D sharp 4 is truly too low, that will result in just as not as consistent. The sound won't be as consistent when you make that transition. So you want to keep on observing, keep on feeling it out, see where the middle ground is, but know that the whole area is going to be a bit gray. And it all happens with the understanding that the vowels are just as consistent and well formed as they can possibly be for your voice, that you are making appropriate modifications to the vowels as you ascend through the zona di passagio towards the secondo passagio, and that your subglottic air pressure is increasing as you continue to mount that scale. Any one of those things goes out on you, then the registration event can give the appearance of changing, but it's really just a reflection of how you're using the system. David, I know one needs good support, arpeggio, to sing high notes softly, but we increase volume by increasing support as well. So, just a question of degree of support or something different? An excellent question. We have a bit more water here. I did remember to mute my channel that time. So, David, the question, this is why I never use the word support, because support for vocalists is really too vague a term, in my opinion. Subglottic air pressure and the rate of the flow of air over the vocal fold, those are two aspects of support that I think most directly relate to your question. And if we ask the question a little differently, then I think you'll find that it answers itself, or if I just rephrase it, which is to say, I know that when we sing high notes, or in order to sing high notes softly, we must increase the subglottic air pressure while titrating the flow of air over the vocal fold. And that answers the question, right? It's not really just the flow of air over the vocal fold. The flow of air does increase as we ascend, but the main change that must occur is the increase in subglottic air pressure. And that equation usually gets left out when we talk about singing high notes. I have been guilty of this too, which is to say that when we're going up, we want to increase the flow of air. That's not exactly true, but it's not exactly false either. There is a small amount of airflow that does change, but it is mostly the subglottic air pressure. So if we can increase the subglottic air pressure really effectively, we can titrate the flow of air, in other words, so that it doesn't flow with such velocity over the vocal fold, then we can sing softer at a higher tessitura. You will also hear a general change in the balance of the vocal fold. A lot of vocalists will shift from being fully voce piena in testa, which is to say the sound of chest voice in head, to a slightly more cricothyroid dominant sound. I'm sorry that I'm using such technical terms, but I don't think that I don't want to talk about this in terms that are, what I want shouldn't really matter here. I want to teach in the most effective possible way, and if we talk about this in the terms that are generally used, I think we miss the point, because it's not as if these like the subglottic air pressure and the flow of air go hand in hand, but we can control that flow of air and hence get a softer sound without gaining all of the volume. At a certain point, the system will break down. No matter how much subglottic air pressure you provide, there won't be enough flow of air over the vocal fold, and you'll have to switch to some other mode of phonation to produce the pitch. But the volume control comes from separating subglottic air pressure from the rate of the flow of air. I hope that I've answered your question without getting too deep into the weeds on that one, but that kind of question requires fairly specific understanding of the vocal mechanism. In my opinion, listening to music is to get to know more songs if you want to perform them, but listening is not practicing. Absolutely, Andre. Hey Jeff, I'm a baritone. Which exercise of yours do you think would be appropriate to do before going to the stage? Whichever exercises are going to most effectively serve you in the repertoire and the performance medium that you are doing. So, I mean, the diaphragmatic warm-ups, I think, are a really, really good all around kind of warm-up in a sort of general usage warm-up. Many of the daily warm-ups are fast and cover full ranges, but it depends on what you're singing. That makes a big difference. If all you're singing is really in the low range of your voice, then you don't need all the upper register stuff, and you would be better served by doing vocalizations that focus on the area where your repertoire is. So understand your repertoire, understand the range, the requirements. Does it have a lot of intervals? Is it all very linear? What are the requirements of your repertoire? And then choose your warm-up accordingly. My friend, who did have a lot of trouble with singing in tune, got a lot better once she started playing piano. She somehow now has more sense of the intervals, and it helps her singing. I must admit, playing piano helped me a lot too. The piano lays it all out in front of you. Like it's all just right here. So a third ceases to be a sort of conceptual idea and becomes quite concrete. You can look at it, you can sing it, you can find other thirds all over the place, and you can sing those too. I always recommend, if you're a vocalist and you want to pick up a instrument and you haven't been playing in the past, start with the piano. It will help you tremendously. It's really, really good. 96TV, is it generally better to have a voice teacher of the same gender? That is a really good question. I personally have had teachers of two genders, and I have been the voice teacher for a variety of genders, and I think it really boils down to the individual more than anything else, and how they work with you, how you enjoy or don't enjoy the lessons, and what their understandings are of the vocal mechanism. I do think that is particularly important. It kind of does depend too on what you are struggling with. So I focus a lot on the secondo passagio because I struggled with it myself, and I wanted to understand, and I kept on not getting enough help to understand what it was that was happening. Why did it work the way it did? Why was it so difficult? Why couldn't I do the things that I heard other people do? And so that is a lot of why I do the things the way that I do them. If that's your struggle, then whatever gender you happen to be, I might be able to help you. Equally, you might feel more comfortable with someone of your gender, in which case then you should find that person who has some of these qualities and understandings around the secondo passagio or registration events, but then go and get lessons with that individual because you feel more comfortable there. It is a lot of different things, I think, that make us comfortable. So like I say, I've had vocal teachers of different genders, and I have always been very, very happy. I think in general, um, I like studying with mezzos, but that could be because my favorite voice teacher was a mezzo. So, you know, it's like chicken and the egg kind of a thing. Would I still feel that way if that were not the case? I don't know. I think the main thing I want to suggest is try to be open-minded about whether the lessons are helping you, right? Like, so if someone's telling you that they're helping you, but you're not seeing an appreciable change, and I mean, like, give it 6 months. I'm not talking about like on a week-to-week basis, you know. If in, you know, maybe 6 months is too long, maybe 3 months, you know, a couple months, give it a couple months. If in a couple months' time you're not seeing what you'd like to see, then ask some questions. Hopefully they'd be open to that. If they're defensive, well, that's some information. Maybe you want to carry on, maybe you don't. If they have some explanations, or they want to talk to you about it, or they can show you what's going on, or they can point to recordings and things like that, maybe that's enough information to continue the lessons. Maybe you want to try someone new. Just be open-minded about it. Ask questions. See how that goes. That would be my my suggestion. Super great. Kevin Jones, what can I do when I struggle with rhythm? What about posture? Two different things there, of course. Okay, so I should probably do this anyways. I'm not awesome about this. Hold on a second here. Okay, so posture. I just finished doing a brand new breathing for singing course, which is on the new website. It is on sale for 30% off to celebrate the creation of the new website. I go through an entire section of those videos on posture. There is a lot of posture information already here on YouTube. You can find it. I did a bunch of shorts on it, and I've done loads of different things on breathing, and breathing and posture are interrelated, hence why I mention it in the context of the breathing course and here. Rhythm. So I don't know where you're at right now with your rhythm studies. Begin by being able to identify the beat. If you can identify the beat and manifest it physically, like tapping your foot or patting on your thigh, begin the process of counting. Start it out loud first, then move to internal. The internal and external rhythmical practices come together over time with practice. So you may find that initially you need to externalize rhythm, and then with practice you will develop that internal sense of it. So you know, it'd be helpful to know more about what's going on with your rhythm in the first place, but without knowing that, start by tapping, counting. Even you know, in counting, like, take that with a grain of salt. Counting in the beginning stages of it is usually more like grunting, where you're kind of just along with the pulse, and then move on to counting so that you can very definitively know where the parts of the melody belong, because they're not kind of generally in a space. You know, they're going to be on a downbeat or an offbeat or somewhere in between, because there's 16th notes too, so it could be an E or an That's what we do for rhythm. Rhythms, I always feel like when I'm teaching and I work on rhythm with clients, I really feel like I'm doing the good work there, because so much of our ability to anticipate where the phrase is going to happen isn't so much dependent on our singing abilities as it is on our rhythm, our music theory abilities. Rhythm is an aspect of music theory. Good question. Russell Brothers, autotune can also be used to help the range of one's voice. You can do just about anything with autotune these days. I mean, it's pretty stunning. When it first came out, I interned in a recording studio for several years, and then went on to stay on the engineering staff, amongst all the other musical things that I've done in my life. And we got one of the first versions of autotune, and it was so cool. But you had to be really, really close, and you could still hear it a little bit. But it's really gone way beyond that nowadays. It is so cool what you can do with all these different tools. Russell Brothers Animation, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Mars, autotune gets overused by too many artists. Minimal usage is not the problem. Fair enough. Yes, but the new trap rasp artists use way too much. Fair enough too. I'm probably gonna freak out when I hit the bottom there. Ruben, do you think playing an instrument can help singers? Yeah, I just mentioned, someone mentioned piano playing for their friend. Agree entirely. Anything that expands your understanding of music in general, I think will help your singing. Along with a good practice regimen. I don't think that you can sit and listen to great vocalists or great instrumentalists all day. I mean, that might be nice. I've certainly done that. But that's not necessarily going to help you sing. It will help an aspect of your singing, but you've still got to get in the box and do the practice. You've got to make the time to practice the craft, the objective aspects of this art form. You know, singing scales, singing interval exercises and things like that. A bit of messa di voce exercises here and there wouldn't hurt. Tonal onset practice, registration event practice if the repertoire that you wish to sing requires that of you. Those are objective aspects of our practice that we can look at. We can determine our aptitude and then practice to make them better. And then we look at what it is we're trying to do artistically, look at our skill set, reconcile the differences, wash, rinse, repeat. Yeah. Couple retracted. Matthew. Hey Jeff, I work in a nightclub, which is not great for the voice yet, so it's going to freak out. It freaked out. There we go. Where are you? So, oh gosh, I can't believe... So thank you all for all of these comments. I had no idea. I'm not even going to come close, but thank you so much for all of these. I will do as many as I can here. I'm going to go into a speed round. Not great. Your gentle warm-ups have helped me recover and begin practicing again after a vocally exhausting weekend. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. That is a really good usage of those. That when I did the first one, way back when, I believe it was in part something like what you're referring to. So really, really great. How long have you been singing? How long have I been singing? I did a solo of the second verse of the Star Spangled Banner when I was in 5th grade, so I would have been 10. So that was my first public vocal performance. I was singing along with Beatles records before that. I don't know if I want to count that, but that's my first public performance. So we'll say 10, which means I have been doing it for 40 years. Thanks for answering my question. Sorry for my bad. No worries. What does the term pulling chest mean exactly? It means pulling chest means committing to the thyroarytenoid vocal muscles beyond the point where you're making a smooth transition. So in other words, you're not allowing the cricothyroid muscles to elongate the vocal fold. You are using only the chest voice muscles. The thyroarytenoid singing muscles, also called the vocalis muscles, are the ones that are primarily tasked with closing the vocal fold for the chest voice. So when you sing in a comfortable range, thyroarytenoid dominant singing. Pulling chest is when you sing into the area of your voice where normally you would change. So for example, if I sang there, I'm going into my zona di passagio, and the cricothyroid muscles are lengthening the vocal fold. So if I said, like, I'm going to pull chest, I'm going to belt, I have to use more force in order to make sure that the thyroarytenoid muscles keep the vocal fold from elongating. That's it. That's pulling chest. Usually what happens is there's not quite enough airflow, and so it gets very strident and kind of reedy sounding. Intonation will tend to be on the flat side as well. FYI too, if someone says that you're going to sing only in your chest voice, but you're going to allow the vocal folds to thin, those two concepts are inconsistent. You can't be only in your chest voice and have the vocal folds thinning, because in order to thin the vocal folds, the cricothyroid muscles have to elongate it. So I know that it gets thought of that way a lot, but just think about that for a second. It's talking about the transition in a way that suggests the transition's not occurring. I find that to be unfortunately confusing, and it obfuscates the information around singing, which for some it won't matter, but for others it will make it harder. And that's the problem that I sometimes feel about it, is that I want everyone to be able to understand what's going on and to make choices about it. I don't know if you already do this, but I think you don't. I think you should listen to famous singers of any genre and chat about their vocal range. Yeah, because a professional vocalist is going to sing in such a way that the registration events are not audible to the external individual. So unless you've worked with that person directly and have intimate knowledge of their voice, you can only speculate. My concern is that I will speculate and it will be taken as fact, when in fact I do not have all of the information to make that assertion. I do not want to do that because someone else may listen to it and say, oh, well, this is clearly how it can be done. This guy says that that's the case, and that wouldn't be right. So, you know, I like listening to other vocalists, and I've done a few reaction videos where, you know, things are pretty obvious, and I tend to talk about a lot of music theory concepts, taking it from a sort of standpoint of the songwriter's standpoint. But when it comes to specifically talking about a voice and what that vocalist is doing, well, if they've really done their job, we shouldn't be hearing the registration events. And so we can't really talk about them definitively. We can only speculate. And I just don't want things to be confusing. I don't want to misrepresent things. I want to make sure I'm giving the absolute most useful information I can. Really liked the guitar warm-ups. That was nice. I'm going to do more of those. I'm going to do more of all of these things. I definitely wanted to do more of that. I was thinking about that. Now, hey, you're welcome. I've been having a wonderful time. We're nearly done here. I'm going to try and pick up some of these last questions. I am so sorry, Jeff. I have to go. I will watch this later. Bye. See you later. Yeah, I think you're probably already gone. Is it okay that I practice singing in the car? Better than not practicing at all. Do be careful. 10 and 2, eyes on the road, no hands at the lip trill. Posture is obviously not ideal. So, if you could make time to practice outside the car too, that would be better still. But if it's the question of practicing or not practicing, better than not practicing. Love the wee 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 exercise. There you go. Thank you for all you do. You really helped me with my performance. Awesome. I am glad to help. I do your warm-ups all the best time. I have a habit of pushing vocally when singing higher notes, soprano, and then the notes sound forced. Have any suggestions? Try to back off would be one, obviously. You might work through those passages with a lip trill first to get a greater sense of what the vocal fold can feel like, how it can function. Then do the passages again without the consonants, so you're only doing vowels. Try to have it feel like it felt when you were doing the lip trill. Once you can do that, add the consonants back in. Hopefully that will help. What to do if I have strained and airy falsetto? Is there any tips? If you're really strained and you've perhaps got a little vocal edema going on, just take a rest would be first and foremost. Make sure that you can recover from that and then get back into your practice. Take it slowly. when you do get back into it, just ease yourself back into it. If you hear any signs of poor adduction, where it's getting airy again, then you might have to wait a little bit longer, or just stick to the most absolute comfortable area of your voice. Stay away from the registration events for a little while. Jeff, you're a lifesaver. Have helped me a ton in my chamber choir. Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. I am glad to hear that. That is what my intention is here with the channel. Hi, Jeff. This is Kirby. Big fan. I've often wondered about the sensation of closing off the sinus cavities at the back of the throat. Is it good practice to keep that open and relaxed throughout the entire range? Yes. Yeah. When we fail to be specific, we miss it. So vocalists sometimes are too nasally or they're too sinusy. That's not specific enough. Better would be that the vocal folds are not adducting as efficiently as they could, and as such, they are allowing for too much sinus resonance. When there's a good balance and good vocal fold adduction, these things tend to balance out. Now, there will be how you speak will have an impact on this. But the opposite, like think about the opposite here. If you close the sinuses off entirely and sang, that doesn't sound particularly good, to me anyway. That might be like a cool character voice for a second, but the resonance in the sinus cavities it is a natural component of the sound of our voice. It's just that too frequently, the vocalist in question doesn't even have good vocal fold adduction. They're not producing sound very efficiently, and so there is an excess of airflow that's flowing through the sinuses in conjunction with the poor reduction of the vocal fold. We say that they sound nasal, but that's too simple. There's more to it than that. Closing off the sinuses entirely is not the answer at all. It is a combination. It begins with good vocal fold adduction and good vowel alignment, full stop. And that is about all we have time for. I do have an Instagram, but I'm rarely over there. I should do more with that. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to remind you once more, Jeff Rolka has been completely redone, and there's a new breathing for singing course there. It really does help the channel in taking these courses if it's possible for you. Thank you. There is still the AAA method, and it's better than ever because it's so much easier to use on the new platform, and that's totally free when you sign up for the newsletter. So all of that's at jeffrolka.com. Thank you so much for being here. Love the questions. Just always enjoy these. I'm going to try and do this more regularly. Thanks again. Have a lovely day. Bye.